Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I'm here with our family of seekers. We're reading through the Bhagavad Gita verse by verse, and we're really diving in deep and talking about its relevance to our lives. And we're in chapter 8 today. We're in chapter 8, and chapter 8 really centers around, it sounds a little bit morbid, perhaps, but it talks a lot about death. Chapter 8 talks a lot about what you're thinking about at that time of death. And we're on some like pretty key verses in chapter 8. We just finished 5 and 6, and we're moving on to 7 now. But in 5 and 6, Krishna tells us that whatever you're thinking about at the time of death will be the state that you'll attain. And he promises us that if we're thinking about him at the time of death, that we'll attain his spiritual abode. And again, this is more than just like, you flip on a light switch and you change a quick thought. You think of Krishna, you go to the spiritual world. No, what we're thinking about at the time of death, at the most intense moment in our lives, really, is this time of death, is a reflection of what we've thought about the most throughout our lives. And what we think about the most is what we value the most. Right? So we've been talking a lot about remembering Krishna throughout our lives. And today we're just going to do one verse, and this verse is so rich. We're going to read text 7, and it's kind of carrying out that same message. But again, and it's a similar message that we've heard over and over and over as we've gone through these past 8 chapters, but it's taking it to like another level. This verse is. And in that, again, the lotus flower is just like unfolding, and we're getting deeper and deeper into these texts and then these meanings. So that's where we are. And before we start, Shakti, could you say our prayers for us today?
Yes, thank you. Om Jnana Timirandasya Yalanjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kara Mayam Dandatisva Pandatikam Vande Ham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitams Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kancha Gaurungi Radhe Vrindavan Ishvari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Prananami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tirubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavembhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Guru Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Thank you, Shakti. And Stella, when you're ready, could you read today's verse for us?
Sure. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt.
Thank you. So in this verse, Krishna is giving Arjuna and all of us really one of the most profound practical instructions here. He's telling us to remember him not just after our work is done, but before it even begins. And this is where we see this beautiful progression in the Gita, in Krishna's instructions. If we remember way back in chapter 3, text 30, Krishna says, do your work and then offer the results to me. And we're really talking about karma, the process of karma yoga, right? You do your work and you offer the results to God. So in that stage, the offering came after the action. It's like, do whatever you would do anyway. Do whatever you want to do and then offer it to God, right? Do your duty first, then dedicate the results. But here in 8.7, Krishna's taking it a step deeper. He's saying, first think of me, then do your work. So it's not just a post-action offering, it's a pre-action meditation. And this is where Krishna gets just like infused in our lives, right? It's not like, okay, I did my job, now I'll offer it to Krishna. But it's let me remember Krishna before I even begin. And then it's a little bit subtle, but there's quite a difference there in the effect of the consciousness, right? Because Krishna, he's not just the receiver of offerings. He's the Lord of our hearts, right? Everything we do is meant for him. So when we begin from that place in that consciousness, right? When we offer ourselves first, then and that's like our intention, right? Then naturally, whatever work we do becomes for Krishna, right? Like our prescribed duties, they start aligning with our devotion, right? And so when we keep remembering him, it's not only our actions that are offered, but it's more subtle than that. It's our mind, it's our intelligence. They're becoming offered to. Our whole inner world starts revolving around him, right? And this is how we ultimately attain Krishna. So for us, we can think like, what would it look like for us to remember Krishna before we begin our work instead of afterwards, right? Instead of only afterwards. And sometimes it's just like a little prayer, like setting an intention. Many of us like do that before we eat. Just offering, offering the food, even if the food is already offered, you set the intention, like, please help this nourish my body so that I can serve you better, right? It's just like that intent. Everything's just infused with that intention to serve God, right? Even if we're going to the office, many of us will get off this call and go to the office today. It's like before we walk into that door, right? Setting the intention, like, Lord, please align whatever work I'm doing, whatever impact I'm having, please let it be for you, right? And please help align my intention. Even if whatever I'm doing, if I'm caring for people, if I'm making money, like whatever it is that I'm doing, please align that intention with yours, right? There's just these little prayers throughout our day can make a big difference before we, engage in whatever activity, or responsibility we have that day. Right? And then think how different our day would look if we started from that remembrance rather than just rushing straight into action. Right? Something as simple as like washing the dishes. Right? We can do it in this consciousness. Right? We're not just washing dishes, right? We're caring for our families. Right? Maybe we have kids we're cleaning up after. We're caring for God's children. Right? We can do all of these things in service to God. Right? And sometimes, when we're so buckled down in responsibility, we think like, with my work, with my family, with my responsibility, with these constant distractions, like, how do I remember Krishna? Like, this sounds nice. It's like, okay, yeah, that's simple. I can do that. And we may walk out of here and remember a couple times, and then slowly, like, that'll kind of wane, right? This is just the nature of us, of people, right? So this is where we have to commit to a really strong sadhana, right? Preferably a morning practice, but a time where we just have focused time in our relationship with God. Like no other distractions. Like when God is our primary focus, right? This dedicated, focused, exclusive time just for connection with Him, right? And this is when we meditate, when we study, when we pray, when we associate with devotees, right? During these times, Krishna comes to the front of our consciousness. Right? This focus time, Krishna comes to the front. So then when we get off this call, right, or we put our japa beads down, or and we return to our worldly activities, at least Krishna is like still in the background, right? This is like at least he's still kind of in the back. He might not be in the forefront all the time, but at least he's in the background, right? But if we never give him time, if our mind is always absorbed in just worldly things, Krishna won't even be in the background, right? And then soon he'll get kind of pushed out of the picture entirely, right? So if we always want to remember Krishna, we first have to sometimes remember him exclusively, right? By practicing remembrance intentionally, we train the mind to keep him close even in daily life. And we see this play out like in our regular relationships. It's like if my husband and I aren't spending quality time just together, even though we have a lot of mutual respect and and all these things, it's like distance starts to come in our relationship. Right. And this is something that naturally happens when you have a baby because you're just so busy doing, all of the things, all of the duties, that it's like if you don't make that intentional time to kind of spend together and to kind of nourish that relationship, then naturally distance just kind of starts to come. You maybe don't think of each other as much. Right. So this is important. This is important, especially in our spiritual life. We have to carve out time in our daily lives, even if it's 10 minutes, whatever it is, that we are consciously bringing our mind back to Krishna. Right? That is like step one in having any ability to remember him throughout the day. And we have to invest in that relationship for some time exclusively. Right? And sometimes our sadhana becomes more like a checklist. Right? Like I noticed that right after I had a baby, I noticed that I was in that kind of mood, like, okay, I just got to get it done. Right? Anyone else ever like to see that mindset just kind of creep in after some time, right? Like I just got to get it done. Right? So we have to, constantly bring it back to what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? Right? Is my sadhana nourishing my remembrance? Right? Or has it become a little bit more like mechanical? Right? And come back to that. Right? Remembering how important it is. Right? It's really it. Right? Our sadhana should be like brushing our teeth. Like we don't forget. We don't go a day without doing it. Yeah. And sometimes the other thing that can hold us back, and I remember feeling this way when I first came into spiritual life. It's not like laziness, but it's like fear, right? Fear that like, am I gonna be just like one of those weirdos that's disconnected from like real life? You know? I don't know if you guys felt this way. I remember when I got back from India, the very first time I ever went, I went to a satsang and they had like deities and I remember this girl that I really liked was telling me that every night they sit down as a family and sing kirtan together. And I remember thinking, that is weird. Isn't that funny? I remember thinking that. And sometimes we're afraid, right? We're afraid that we're gonna be like kind of like misfits. I don't know. Maybe you guys are more evolved than me, but this was very real for me when I first started spiritual life, right? And as we kind of mature, we realize that this fear comes from a misunderstanding, right? Because we assume that spiritual consciousness means withdrawing from the world, right? Like you're not relatable at all and you're just, kind of in your own bubble, right? But that's not at all what Krishna is telling Arjuna to do in the Gita. Right? He's not telling him to renounce action. He's telling him to remember him while doing his duty. Right? Krishna's encouraging Arjuna to fight. And he's encouraging him to do his duty. He's encouraging him to act in the world, but with your consciousness in me. Right? And that's what the Gita teaches us, that sacred, it's not just found only in the silence of a meditation room or a temple. It's meant to flow into everything we do. Right? We can plug into source. We can plug in at a temple. We can plug in our sacred japa chanting space in our house, right? But we're plugging in so that we can go out, right? And carry God in our hearts, right? Carry God in our consciousness. And in that way, everything that we're doing, the work we're doing in this world, is infused with love, straight from source, right? Because we spend some time plugged into source, right? Like those cars that like Teslas now, right? You plug them into source, and then you can drive around, and they're powered, right? These electric cars. We're just like that. We're pulling up, we're plugging into source, right? And then we're driving away, and we're doing our duty. We're engaging in this world, but with that consciousness, with God consciousness, with God in our hearts, with God directing our movement. Right? And when we can do this, when we can act with devotion in this service attitude, even our ordinary lives become a way to connect with Krishna. And then what happens after this, and this is a really beautiful part of spiritual life, the ups and downs of daily life, right? Which we all experience. It's inevitable. That's the nature of this temporary existence. It's crazy because we have such a hard time like when these things happen, when something changes, when somebody, loses a job or a relationship, or, somebody gets sick. It's like, it doesn't make sense to us. We have a hard time coping with it, right? Because our soul is eternal. It's like this is right. This world isn't made for my soul, right? My soul's eternal. Why are all these things temporary, right? But when we're connected to source, when our consciousness is connected with source, the ups and downs of life stop shaking us so much, right? They stop rocking us so much because we're not overly identifying with the body as much as we have been, right? For lives and lives, right? And they stop feeling so random or frustrating. We are able to see them in divine light. We're able to see them as opportunities to see Krishna's love and guidance in action. We see them as ways that Krishna's reeling us in closer to him. Right? Even through the pain, even if we're like, yeah, this sucks. I'm feeling this. This is not feeling good. Underneath those layers, right? Those superficial layers, we can see Krishna's guiding hand, right? And pulling us back to him, teaching us that this material existence, it's not a place for us, right? It's not a place for us. This temporary material existence, it's meant to teach us that. It's meant to teach all these experiences, all these tribulations that we're going through are meant to help us turn back to God. Right? So to maintain this devotional vision amidst all the noise of the world, we really have to balance this time to go out, right? For our outer, our public lives, right? And time for our inner connection. Right? Because these periods of the focused remembrance, they recharge our hearts like our Teslas, right? So that we can carry Krishna into our everyday actions. Right? And then when we find that right balance between serving outwardly and remembering inwardly, life itself begins to feel sacred. Right? And that's where that misunderstanding becomes like, oh, I'm going to start singing kirtan every night and become a weirdo. Like it's not even about that. It's just trying to cultivate remembrance so that you can show up in the world in a more loving, compassionate, connected way. Right? That's what it's about. It's not about like joining a new clique, getting a new group of friends. It's, it may look like that externally. And material vision is definitely may see that. Right? But spiritual vision, it's just trying to remember God so that we can show up more loving, more compassionate, more connected. Right? And so that ultimately we can remember him at our final moment and never have to return to this temporary material existence again. right? Right? So spirituality, it's not about escaping the world. It's about seeing the divine through it. And that's why we do what we do. That's it. That's the whole reason we do what we do. Right? And when we discover that the sacred isn't something to fear, it's something to fall in love with, right? Does anybody want to share anything before we move on? Are you guys connecting with this?
Yeah, I try to before I teach a class, or taking attendance or as they walk in to think Krishna's in their heart, Krishna's in their heart, Krishna's in their heart. So I don't think about Krishna when I'm teaching because yeah,
Yes.
it's in the moment and everything, but I do try to remember so that I don't get like to keep it personal. Like it's these students. It's not, each student brings their own package of fears and anxieties and desires and everything. So I just want to remember to see them as spirit soul. And it
Mm,
does help me be less irritated by them sometimes. Or, like I don't know, I just see them more as uh just I don't know, it's more in the through the lens of reality.
right. Yeah.
I'm not saying I remember to do that through my whole day, but that is something I've been doing for a few years. Once I thought of it, and it does help me be in the classroom because I'm with all these other souls,
Yeah.
and there's 21 little tiny Krishnas in the hearts in the room.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I kind of do. This is Alyssa. Can you guys
Yeah.
hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I feel the same way because I also have the same like work stress and like work environment in the public schools, and I think this year one of the things that has like really helped me, I mean, obviously, my material condition has greatly improved since last year's job experience, but um I think like being able to appreciate being with the kids as like service to Krishna, and like really making that first and foremost instead of like the things that like materially we're told we're supposed to do, like collect data and like do all these things or whatever, but it's like focusing on those material things is what like makes a lot of the public school employees like so miserable, and it's what makes like
Mm,
a lot of the children really miserable, and it's like the kids, like they don't really want to be there a lot of the times. I mean, at least not my kids. Like, that's why they're in special education, is because there's a lot of issues going on. And I think like shifting from material to the spiritual lens, and like just seeing everything as like a service to Krishna. Like it's a service to Krishna that we're here today. It's a service to Krishna that we're here together and we can make the most of our time this way. Um, and making that like the driving thing instead of like knowing that you literally only have like what 15 minutes a week with these kids in a group that are like going bonkers, and there's really like nothing materially productive that can come, I think, from that kind of service. I think, if you get mired down and being depressed about the material reality of it, that's what's going to make it so hard, right? And so like
mm,
shifting, like this year being able to be back in person with the kids has really helped, because then I can really be like, hey, I'm here, you're here, we're here together, and like that's a service. Does
mm.
that make sense? And that's reduced a lot of my internal suffering with this reality.
Wow. Yeah. No, that makes total sense. I feel like a lot of people in those in positions where you're working with people directly or caring for people directly or teaching, people or children, more and more our society has evolved to that just being like a number on a page or a name on a piece of paper. Like we've just like dehumanized some of these services and we just completely lost connection.
Right. It's completely dehumanizing. And I think that's why, that's why you see a lot of really sick people in these jobs.
Hmm.
They just don't have, I mean, they started out wanting to make a difference and then they realized after a while they weren't able to make a difference, but they're trying to make a difference through material conditions.
Hmm.
And that's not something we can really do. It's just not practical, right? So you kind of have to shift your mindset to the spiritual. Otherwise, it is kind of a trap.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
my opinion. That's where I'm taking it. That's like, the medicine that I'm taking right now.
Yeah. No, it's
And whether the kids learn anything is up to Krishna. It's
mm,
not up to, the teacher so much. Like you put it out there, but what they get out of it is between them and Krishna. And that's helped me a lot. Like, oh, not everybody's succeeding, but like everybody's got their own, relationship. What do I know about what succeeding means?
mm, yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I was
Such
going
good
to,
points.
sorry, Radha, I don't mean to.
Yeah.
I was there is so the human condition to pull back on anything we don't understand or we're not like that seems like you said that's weird like it's so the human condition to do
Mm,
that to open up and go wow what is that about like that we just don't do that we're just if it's not the way like on our do this path that we're on we're like that's weird that's different
mm,
I about that why is that like that it's very much questioning and questioning is good but I think it's nice to question and then also say I'm going to question because I want to make sure I'm on the right path but also I'm going to open my heart and see what is this path offering me? Right. So, like, also doing a little bit of both. And then if that path, for whatever reason, doesn't resonate with you, maybe you keep looking at different paths instead of just cutting it off at the head.
mm. Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Love this space.
It's
I love this
yeah.
space.
What?
Yeah. No, no. That no, no, it's that's totally true.
Yeah. It's interesting, we're all just craving connection. Like we're just
Yeah.
creatures of connection. And what's available for us in this material world is we're going to get some connection. You can have some nice relationships and that's good, right? But really nothing will satisfy our heart like connection with God. And once we do that, just like Alyssa was saying, like once we can even like, our material connections that we have, once we can spiritualize those and offer them to God, that is like the ultimate connection. And to stop even looking for, just like you teachers are talking about, like I can't control what difference I make in the kids' lives. I just have to do my service and do my service for God, and that's up to God. Like how much that can transform your mindset as you walk into that classroom every day. And it's amazing. You guys are inspiring. And Alyssa is like, I just met Alyssa maybe a year and a half ago or so, and she's just like to have that deep realization and be practicing that is at this stage is yeah really evolved. So
Thanks, man.
yeah, commend you
Yeah.
all.
Same. Thank you. I'm so glad that I met you too. We met at Gora
Or
Purnima.
Praneem, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, amazing. Yeah, so that's what this stuff's about. That's what this stuff's about is living it. And this is where we're gonna take this next, and we're gonna get really practical because I'm all about getting practical. A couple people, I think like a couple people last week I talked to, and told me that your classes are just always really practical. I'm like, okay, I guess that's kind of my thing. But that's what I like. I like to keep it real so that we can like actually practice it. And it's not just like theoretical. We hear it, oh, that's nice. That makes me feel good. It's like, okay, yeah, that's great, but how's that showing up in our lives? How are we living that? How is that transforming? Right? How are we seeing that playing out? Right? So that's where we're going next. Right? And I want to bring up something that is so common in spiritual life. So especially like in this culture, it's because it's spiritual life is not like integrated into our normal lives. Right? It's like it's almost like separate. Like, okay, this is my spiritual life. This is the time I go to church or I do things, and this is the time that I, go out and do whatever I want, basically. Right? And we think like, okay, yeah, my connection with God's it's important, but I'm gonna get to it later. Right? It's so common to treat devotion like a spare tire, like something to turn to only when things go wrong. Like I'm glad I have it, but I more so go there like if my tire gets flat and I need a boost, right? And we all know from being here, like Krishna, this God consciousness, it's not meant to be a backup plan, right? It's meant to be our guiding force. And if we want to live with clarity, with purpose, with fulfillment, we need to move that connection from the trunk of the car to the driver's seat, right? So that our devotion is our steering wheel. It's not our spare wheel, right? And this means making your relationship with God the center of your life, the foundation on which you make choices, right? The foundation of which you set your priorities daily, monthly, yearly, navigate responsibilities. Right? And the Gita points directly to this. Krishna tells Arjuna to first fix his mind on him and then perform his duty. And so it's not about neglecting our obligations. It's about doing them better. Right? When we lead with devotion, our work, our relationships, our goals all become clearer and more meaningful. And I remember this was big for me. Like I went through like a plethora of boyfriends in my 20s, right? I wasn't very spiritual. I was practicing yoga. I was spiritual, but I didn't have like real direction. I was just like kind of like out there in the ether, like doing spiritual things, but I wasn't like really focused. But when I got focused on my spiritual life and I kind of learned this principle, like think of God first and then perform your duty. Even like the qualities that I was choosing in a husband were completely different than like the qualities before. And it's just like, oh, that's fun. That's exciting, right? That's like, whatever you do when you're just like doing whatever you feel like without any real thought. Right? That's like my 20s, right? But then when you put God first and then you're like, okay, I want a godly husband, right? Somebody who has these qualities and somebody who's supportive of my spiritual life, right? Someone who makes who also wants God at the center of my life, of our lives, right? And who supports that. And it totally changes the whole trajectory of your life when you think about God first and then you perform your duty. Like, how would God want me to show up in this moment, right? And how could I go out there and do this activity or choose a partner or choose a friend or a job or a place to live, right? How can I make those decisions in my life with God in the driver's seat, right? Well, thinking of God first, right? Because without that divine steering wheel, we're left driving with just our mind, right? Just our, and like Shakti was saying, like our mind is it's just our conditioning. Our mind is just a product of our conditioning. And here in the West, where culture is so like corrupt, and I know I had like my parents did the best they could, but I didn't have the greatest examples in my life at times, right? And that's what I learned. Right? That's what's in my mind, right? So now kick that out, and put somebody qualified in the driver's seat, right? And somebody who's a safe driver, right? Someone who's not restless and short-sighted like our minds. Right? Because when Krishna guides the wheel, right, when our devotion steers our thoughts and our actions, we become protected. We become peaceful. We become purposeful. Right? When we get cut off in traffic, we're not like tailgating the person who just cut us off to teach them a lesson. right? No, we pause, right? We think like, how would God want me to respond in this moment? You know what? I'm going to give that person the benefit of the doubt. They're probably in a rush. They probably didn't see me, right? And then hopefully they'll give me the benefit of the doubt when I accidentally do that to somebody else. Right? It's like putting not just flying off whatever our mind tells us to do. Right? And this takes discipline and it takes practice and it takes a sincere relationship with God. Right? But this is how we become protected, we become peaceful, we become purposeful. Right? And we can all think of times in our lives, or even like, just yesterday, we can probably think of a time that my ego or my fears were in the driver's seat. Right? And a lot of it is just identifying when that happens, when that shows up, kicking that to the curb and putting our devotion in the driver's seat. Right? So I'm going to give some examples of what this looks like in real life, and then I want to hear from you guys of how it shows up in your life. Right? So the first thing is just starting our day with God, right? So a spare wheel kind of mentality is just like getting out of bed, turning on the coffee, going into your day. Okay, I'm going to chant later. I'm going to meditate later, right? But then the nighttime you're exhausted, just like doesn't happen. That's like spare wheel, right? God, steering wheel kind of mentality here is that we're starting our day intentionally with God, right? Even just 10 minutes, right? That remembrance is going to shape our mood and focus our whole day. So that's like number one thing we can do before a day even starts is putting your devotion the steering wheel, right? Just starting the day just like that. Right? Work and career, right? How many of us get caught up chasing success, right? Chasing money, right? Chasing position, right? And then when things don't go our way, we turn to God and we're like, please fix this. Please help us. Right? This is spare wheel mentality. This is when God's our spare wheel, right? But our steering wheel, just like we've been talking about, we're going to see our career as service, right? An offering of our talents to Krishna. Even when we make decisions, we're making decisions that are more centered around that goal. How can I better serve Krishna? Right? How is this career decision? How is this promotion going to affect my spiritual life? How is this new group that I'm joining? How is this new association going to affect my spiritual life? Right? And sometimes we don't get to control all of these things, and we have to take it as an opportunity to kind of be pruned a little bit. But sometimes we can, right? And so it's those little decisions, right? Because we know when we're making position, when we're making money, when we're making success, when we're revolving our decisions around that. Right? So it's just kind of a different perspective, right? Relationships, right? You're in a relationship, Krishna's your spare wheel. You're going to try to control or please everyone, right? Maybe you're not, but that's what I would do. All right, I'm only going to remember God when I get hurt, right? But if God's your steering wheel in your relationships, right? You're seeing others as souls, just like Stella and Alyssa are talking about, right? You're practicing patience, compassion, because you're seeing them as souls. Right? Finances, right? Spare wheel, you're stressed, you overspend, right? You pray you pray when things go wrong, right? But if God's your steering wheel, you see money as God's energy, right? And so you use it responsibly and gratefully. All right, so we could just go on and on of the spare wheel mentality versus the steering wheel mentality. And the reality is that in our lives, we're going to be a mixed bag. Right? There's going to be times that Krishna is our forefront, that we're making decisions for that. And there's going to be times that we're acting out of fear, that we're making decisions from our ego, right? But the idea is that the more that we really lean into our relationship with God, the more that we protect that personal sadhana, that personal time where we connect with God, right? The more that we cultivate that, the more that we'll see that God becomes more of a steering wheel and not a spare wheel. And it takes time, but God will show us if that's what we want. Right? If we sincerely want that, if we sincerely want to be called out when we're using God like a spare wheel, right? God will show us. And we'll have that level of awareness and the wherewithal to make a change in that moment, right? So what do you guys think? What's coming to mind? Are you guys feeling like in your lives God is more a steering wheel or a spare wheel? Where do you feel like he could be more of a steering wheel?
Hi, Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Um, I would say most of the time it's not a steer wheel. It's not a, what's it called? A steer wheel.
The
A
steering wheel.
spare.
Yeah.
I,
Most of the time it's not the spare.
yes, because I can't, I need, I need to start with the wheel. I need to start with Krishna in the center of the beginning of my day. For so much of my life, I didn't. So it's really important for me to start that like immediately, get on, listen to, a meditation, start chanting. Like I need to jump right in. And if I don't, it definitely affects my day and it kind of puts me off. And I'm not able to, for example, if someone cuts me off and like, maybe they were in a rush or and pray for them, like yeah, like I had a situation where I did. It was a hard situation, but I didn't get nasty. I just said, I know you're on your path and I pray for you. And during Kartik, that's times 1,000. So this prayer is going to reach you. It's like, I don't know. For me, I feel like it's like leading, like my heart leading with love or my heart leading with like resentment and anger and all the stuff, like you say, all the stuff. And so yeah, I have to, I mean, I'm not saying it always is, but I just know that if I don't do that, my days, there's going to be challenges with my day.
Mm, yeah, that is perfect. That's perfect. And you're one of those sincere souls who you want to know. Like you want to know when you're not leading with that. Like I feel like your prayer to God would be like, show me when I'm not leading with that and correct me. Like you're not afraid of that. And that's why you're so sincere. I mean, that's why you make so much progress is because you're open and and that's really where your intention is, even if it hurts, you're bold and courageous in that way. Like even if it hurts, I want this experience to mold me, to teach me, to align me more with God's will and less with my own conditioning. Yeah.
My own conditioning will bring me to a very bad place. And so I guess part of it, maybe it is that I never want to give myself any credit. So like, oh no, it's not that. Maybe it is, but maybe it's also me knowing like I'm hanging on. And I've been hanging on for so long. When I finally found Krishna consciousness, I was like, okay. And I started to understand it. And I thought, okay, I need to lead with this because if I can't fall back.
It's
I
just
just,
suffering.
yes.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel the same. Yeah. Thank you, Shakti. Anybody else? Want to share? Stella?
I was reminded of the song Jesus Take the Wheel.
It's such a good song, right?
It is actually. I mean, definitely, it has the feeling of, needing God at the moment of uh trouble.
Yeah.
But the sentiment is good, like you take the wheel. But I think that's what I love about Krishna consciousness is that we both have to be in the driver's seat, God and us.
Mm,
It's not, we're also not like just saying, you do it all.
right.
It's, huh? Two fingers of, like, I
Bring your
don't know.
husband
It's
on
like,
here. Let him share it with us. What's he saying?
very true. No, he was talking about the rope,
Oh,
like is
yeah.
stronger when
If Krishna, she
it,
can't find the rope, and it's always two fingers too
oh,
short.
it's always two fingers too short. In Kartik, the rope. No, but I was thinking too, like when you have two strands, um, it's a stronger rope. Like I don't know, it's just I like I like the idea of working with God that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not just an abdication of all our ability or responsibility or will.
Right.
It's dovetailing all of our stuff with
Yeah.
his will, but it's like it's not that we disappear.
Right.
We're still we've still got responsibility for the car. And in a certain way
Yes.
we are the like or we are the car, or I don't
Yeah.
know, anyway, if I could take it that far. But yeah, I like that because it's, I mean, maybe that's my immaturity, but our we're a person too,
Mm.
so it's not, and sometimes it's, God is a person and it's really hard for people to get there.
Yeah.
But I find too that I know a lot of people who um they don't want to be a person.
Mm.
Like, they want to just merge into oneness, or
Mm.
um they eventually want to stop all their suffering by stopping themselves. So
Mm.
it's like we both have to be persons. We're a person and God's a person, just in different quantities. Um, and I don't know, I like that because then you're not alone,
Mm.
and God gets to God also doesn't have to be alone in that situation.
Mm.
You know
Yeah.
what, Stella? What are you talking? What basically I feel like what I'm hearing is, and maybe it's just what I want to hear, I don't know, but it's like if God is doing it, then it's like you're just sort of in the back seat and he's chauffeuring you around. Like just going with the car now,
Right.
right? So, but if you're doing it with him, you're holding hands and you're skipping along and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
no, we should do it this way. And it's sort of like this culmination of oneness with him, like you guys are doing it together, but he's not driving you around, and then you're, because then you never really figure it out, you're just
Right.
right.
And yeah, he's teaching you in relationship, which is the only way you learn. And I think those of us who are teachers know that it's when you have a relationship that the student can really imbibe what, the teaching is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Krishna relishes our relationship. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of the things I like about Krishna consciousness.
Yeah. It's the ultimate relationship.
Yeah.
Right. And we see again in our material relationships how transformative a good relationship can be. Right? Like it could
Yeah.
just really, but what to speak of a strong relationship with God, I mean, again, that's the ultimate transformation of the heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
So nice. Thank you all for the reflections. So, yeah, now we're kind of getting to the conclusion here, like kind of tying all of this together, like why all of this matters. It's because time won't wait for us to remember Krishna, right? Whether we think of him or not, time is going to keep pushing us forward, right? And the question is, where is it pushing us? Is it pushing us towards more entanglement, right? Or is it pushing us towards liberation? Right? And this might sound bleak, but just like you guys are saying, Krishna teaches us that we're not helpless passengers. Just like Shakti said, right? We can choose where time carries us. And then to do that, we have to remember who we are, both body and soul. Right? The body's temporary, but the soul is eternal. Right? The soul is eternal and it's conscious. And when our consciousness is attached to the body and its possessions, death feels like a disaster. Right? But when our consciousness becomes attached to Krishna, the ultimate spiritual reality, right? That's when we begin to experience freedom. We realize we're not the body. We're not the body. We're not being swept away by time. No, we're the soul being drawn towards eternity. Right? What a paradigm shift, right? Because time is pushing us all. But we could be in completely different places. Even if you're like standing on the same square, right? But you're in completely different places depending on where your consciousness is. Right? Is your body being swept away by time, right? Or is your soul being drawn towards eternity? Right? And so this is the practice, and this is why we try to build this attachment. Right? We try to build this attachment to God through, and the process is this bhakti yoga, the yoga of love and remembrance. Right? If we spend our life remembering Krishna, then when that final moment comes, our mind will naturally turn towards him. Right? Because just like we learned in the previous verses, whatever we remember at death determines what we attain next. Right? Matter, spirit, bondage, liberation. Right? It's inevitable. Time's going to push our bodies towards age and old death, or towards old age and death. Right? That's inevitable. That's a given. It's going to happen to every single one of us. We might be surprised when it happens to us or someone we love, but that's the nature of this world. Right? But if we use our time to move our consciousness towards God, right, then even as the body declines, which it will, the soul rises. Right? The soul rises towards elevation and liberation. It's like a new way of looking at getting old. Right? Like we don't have to try to preserve this body that's impossible to really preserve. Right? I mean, we can try, but eventually it's gonna decay, and it's gonna go away. Right? That's the material body. But our soul can rise. Our soul can rise towards elevation and liberation. So what are we using this vehicle for? Are we using it as a vehicle for the soul? Right? As a vehicle for the soul to connect with God, so that our soul is rising, so that our consciousness is elevating, so that at that final moment we can be free? Right? Or are we getting attached to it? Are we getting attached to our body? Right? Are we trying to keep it from getting, torn down by time? Right? And sad when it does, and then wrapped up in all the feelings that come in that for us and our loved ones. Right? So the Gita is offering us like a whole different perspective. And it's sweet, and it's liberating, and it's uplifting. It is encouraging. Right? So this is why Krishna is assuring Arjuna and all of us, if you do this, you will come back to me. If you do this, you will come back to me. Right? That's like a golden ticket. Because there's nothing to save this body. It can't be saved. It can't. Right? And Srila Prabhupada echoes this assurance so beautifully. Right? Even if we have so many conditionings or we make mistakes, right? If we sincerely follow the process of God consciousness, we will surely return to Krishna. Right? So this is Krishna's loving invitation, right? Remember me, serve me, love me, and I'll guide you through it all. Right? When we let devotion steer our life, our every moment, like even the difficult ones, become sacred. Wouldn't that be so nice, right? To think of the most difficult thing you're going through right now. Right? The stronger your relationship is with God, the more sacred that moment can become. Right? You may like what feels like you just got run over by a bus now, right? As your relationship becomes stronger, it's more like a little prick, right? Because we're taking more shelter in the spiritual than the material. And that's what happens naturally when we develop more of a relationship with God than relationship with all of our material things. Naturally. right? It's like as I have a stronger relationship with my spouse, the things that, my acquaintances say about me, it doesn't bother me as much because I have like a strong network. And so if we have that strong spiritual connection, we're less shaken by our material connections, right? And it's that spiritual connection that's ultimately going to take us home, that's ultimately going to liberate us, right? So let's invest in that, right? If we live and remember Krishna before, during, and after our actions, then our lives become the practice that leads us back home to him, right? And even if we forget sometimes, Krishna never forgets us, right? Each small effort to remember him draws his attention and mercy. That's the beauty of bhakti. And it's not about perfection, it's about connection. So we make a little bit of effort. He sees that effort and he reciprocates tenfold. Right? That's a process of bhakti, and that's Krishna's compassionate love and mercy that he has for his devotees. So that's all that I had today for this verse. Anybody like to share any final reflections? Anything that came to mind or anything you're gonna take away with you today?
Shakti again.
Great. Thank you, Shakti.
I'm just going to take away Krishna is my best friend and my biggest well wisher.
Mm, so good. Thank you, Shakti. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you
Thank
all for.
you.
Thanks, Alyssa. So nice to have you again.
Yes, thank
Sangha.
you for sharing your gift with us.
It's Krishna's. It's all just an instrument for Krishna. Thank you all. We'll see you on Thursday.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.